over what to do when you're new to Darktide, or if you're trying to get into it in 2026 and hopefully onwards. So, when you first boot up Darktide, you'll get asked to create a class. My advice for that's any class is good, just kind of whatever sounds good to you. They're all playable, they're all fine. Some are better than others in the meta sense of things, but none of them are bad in any sort of way. So go with whatever seems interesting to you. This is the main hub area. It's the Morning Star, the ship you'll be on after you complete the tutorial, and a lot of these vendors that you see will not be available until you start actually playing some missions. So when you first go to the mission board, it'll always be in the center, and you'll see this screen pop up with a bunch of different locations or special assignments. If you do the campaign, it'll take you through the missions in a sequential order. So, yeah, I recommend for new players doing this in a sequential order, just so you can, I guess, enjoy the story without having to kind of piece together the narrative that is Darktide's story. If you don't care, then obviously it doesn't matter. But that's my recommendation for the story, at least. So the only things you need to know about the mission board is that these missions all rotate. Like, you can't play every mission all the time. They rotate from, I think it's like 30 minutes or so that they're up here. You can see the time. It's 20 minutes. So if we look at like Dark Communion right here, you see the timer up here. That's how long you have to like start the mission. You can start the mission at 1 minute, whatever, doesn't matter. And yeah, as long as the mission's there, you can start it, and then when it goes away, it'll change to something else. So if you don't do the campaign, I would advise doing quick play, and then just doing a public game, because quick play will give you a 10 to 20% bonus based on difficulty of resources and experience. So quick play is your best friend when you're leveling up a character for the first time, unless you have like a specific level that you just really want to try, or a specific modifier as well. So the missions will have modifiers on them. You can read about them if you click on each individual one to see what they do. They vary greatly from packs of different specials, more spawns of like hordes, different like lights on, lights off, fog, gas, different things like that. In Auric and in Heresy difficulty, there is a mission that's a Maelstrom mission. These have special modifiers that only these missions have, but they give a lot more rewards in terms of experience and money. So if you're confident that you can do it, then Maelstrom is a pretty great way to earn resources really, really fast. But they are pretty difficult. Even if you've been playing the game for a while, they're still pretty hard. So, note of caution with that. So the only other thing that you need to know with the mission board would be the difficulties and how to unlock them. You start off with like Uprising, and you have to play, I think, at least one Uprising game. This is the base difficulty of the game. It's extremely easy. Nobody who has any real experience with shooters or anything of the kind is going to really struggle with this difficulty. Like, if you've played any horde shooter before, you'll know this is baby mode, essentially. But after you play this, you can go to Malice. Obviously, if you're like super new, like this is your first shooter ever, stay on Uprising until you like kind of really feel like you get a hang of it, maybe like 2 or 3 games. Then go to Malice, and I would advise, honestly, staying in Malice until you're confident enough that you're starting to get a little bit bored with the difficulty. You have to play a certain amount of games. I think it's like 10. You have to complete like 10 Malice missions or something like that. 10, 15, I can't remember the exact number. There'll be a bar where these difficulty sliders are, and it'll tell you how, and it'll like, when that bar fills up, that's when you unlock the next difficulty. So you have to do that for each one. Heresy is the next one after Malice. This is where the game kind of starts getting intense. It starts to get exciting. It starts to get where you're a little bit more of a challenging situation throughout the mission. So in Heresy, I would advise taking it slow and trying to learn the sounds of the specials and learn the maps a bit more. Pay attention to your surroundings. Pay attention to where the specials are coming from. That type of information will help you going forward, and focus really hard on your fundamentals, which we'll go over soon. And I would never advise going up in difficulty until you're completely confident that, like, I've been playing Heresy for a while. It's easy. I don't struggle with this at all anymore. I win at least like 70% of the matches I play in it. I'm ready to move forward to something more challenging so I don't fall asleep on my computer. And then eventually you work your way up to Auric. And this is the, I guess, main difficulty of the game. This is the main difficulty of the game with public matchmaking anyways. So this is where you'll spend a lot of time once you're really comfortable with your character. Until you start doing Havoc, which is a different thing altogether. So we'll go to this little terminal here. This will take you to the Psychanium. Darktide has a little, I guess, practice area with most of the enemies in the game that'll let you test out builds, test out damage, and things of that nature. So it's very useful to show off some of the more fundamentals of how the game works and what's going on. So I'm gonna pretend like this is your first time seeing any of the enemies. So we'll go from the most basic is the Poxwalkers. These enemies here, they don't have anything really special. They're just zombies. They're just funky looking zombies with like sticks or improvised weapons, and they're very weak. Any weapon in the game will kill them very quickly. So nothing really special here, except that they do come in big groups, big groups. Hordes are very, very dense in the later difficulties, and they can pack out a lot of damage if you aren't careful. So next are these enemies are not elites, but they're a step above the Poxwalkers. They have armor in different places. Some of them have like a flak armor helmet or body suit. A lot of them have guns. So guns, the melee ones do actually hit pretty hard, and they're a little bit tankier. But they're still, most weapons in the game aren't going to struggle to kill any of them. And these will also come in fairly large groups. So just be aware, you know, that these things are things you will see commonly. They don't have any sound cues or anything like that except for the guns. The guns always have like a little like whispery little sound cue when you're getting shot at, and you can dodge shooting enemies by sliding. So running and crouching at the same time will make you slide. It does pause your stamina as well. So when you're running, you see my stamina isn't decreasing. And that's pretty much all you need to know. Is sliding will dodge the guns, but it will not dodge melee attacks. So if I try to slide and this enemy is swinging at me, it will hit me. Sliding does not break the melee tracking of any enemy. Doesn't matter if it's an elite, a boss, even like the little Poxwalkers. If you're sliding, these enemies can still hit you. Dodging is how you avoid melee attacks. And dodging will break the melee tracking, essentially, so they'll miss. As long as you time it right. It has a little bit of timing where about like the start to like the middle of the dodge, you aren't going to take damage, but yeah, you can get hit near the end of it. So it's not that hard to get a hold of if you've played any story game with a dodge mechanic before. It's very similar. So the counter at the bottom where you see my stamina is the top bar. The little 4 bars at the bottom are your dodge counters. So you can only dodge effectively around 4 times. There's only 4 effective dodges before you have to stop. See, they fill up really quickly. That's because of the class I'm playing, but they don't take too long to come back generally. Each weapon, like my gun, will only have 3. That's pretty normal for guns. Some will only have 2. Some melee weapons will only have 3. But these are effective dodges that will break melee tracking if you go past that. So let's see if I can run myself out. My dodge will start getting shorter. I'm covering less distance, it's slower. There's less invincibility frames, there's less iframes in it. So you're way more likely to get hit, and you won't be able to cover as much distance, which will be very dangerous for you if you let that happen too often. So you kind of want to dodge, and then just let your dodges come back if you can. And the other defensive mechanic is blocking. So blocking is effective against most melee attacks, as long as you have stamina. If the melee attack breaks your stamina, you'll start to take damage. So blocking is better than it sounds, though, because it will 100% stop any melee attack that if you have stamina. It doesn't matter if it's from these guys, or if the gunner tries to pull out his melee weapon and hit you, you can block it. Bosses, you can block their stuff too, and bosses will one-shot a lot of your toughness and do a lot of damage to your health as well if you let them hit you. So you can take a lot of damage for essentially for free if you're not blocking enough. So the smartest thing to do is, if you're fighting like a big group, is to block, dodge, and then attack. But watch for enemies' swings. They might seem like an overwhelming amount, but there's only a handful of enemies in front of you at any given time that can swing at you, and you can see their arms move and learn when they're going to swing and how to time your swings or your blocks to not take damage. And this is something that you'll just have to be conscious of. And the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. By the time you reach Auric, you really shouldn't be taking damage very much at all to these enemies, except for the shooters, maybe. The shooters will be doing damage either way, because sometimes you get stuck in bad corridors, bad situations with positioning, and until you get more map knowledge, the shooters will be kind of an issue that you'll just have to kind of hopefully work around, usually by shooting them and killing them before they kill you. Now we'll go to some of the elites, and some of the caveats to blocking that I did not mention is that enemies like this is a mauler, and he has this big axe. So he has 2 or 3 attacks. He can push you, which doesn't really do very much damage, and he can do a sideways slash like that with his axe. And it will hurt, but it won't do a crazy amount of damage. But he can also do an overhead like this. And if that overhead hits you on higher difficulties, it'll kill you. If you're not an Ogrim or an Arbitrator, you will essentially just die if that hits you. Like no pass go, no $200, you're dead. Overheads in this game are very dangerous. Crushers can do them, and maulers. So these 2 enemies can do them, and they do spawn quite often in higher difficulties. So avoiding the overhead is absolutely critical to staying alive. This is more about timing than anything. The Crushers and the Maulers both have a very large windup that looks like it's going to come out faster than it is, but even so, getting away from them or killing them is, before they can really do it too many times, is usually the goal. They're also susceptible to CC, so if, use your ability. A lot of abilities do have stagger effects. Some weapons can stagger them too. So you can absolutely CC the enemies to death if you have something that lets you. These enemies are also very tanky. So if I hit him in the head, you can see it's carapace armor. And he's also got a flak armor body chest, which the damage he's taking is from the poison will count as body, I think, and that's why it's showing flak. But his head is carapace armor. Carapace armor is the hardest armor type in the game. It's very, very difficult for most weapons to do damage to it. So the Crusher is the tankiest regular enemy in the entire game because it's completely covered in Carapace. Doesn't matter if I hit it in the leg, the hands, the arms, it's all Carapace armor. It all takes basically no damage to certain weapons. There are a lot of weapons that can do really good damage to Carapace armor, but there are also a lot of weapons that don't do anything to it. So having a plan to deal with this type of enemy is almost essential in later stages of the game, because you're going to have to fight a lot of these enemies, and if you don't plan to deal with them, then you're going to get steamrolled by them. So my advice would be learn your weapons as you're playing the game, and you'll find things that work for you. There's plenty of builds out there from people who are way better at the game than me for that kind of thing. For now, we're going over basics. So the rest of these are elite gunners. This is a dread gunner, scab gunner, and a plasma gunner. These both just have machine guns of, one's a regular bullet rifle, one's a laser rifle, and they'll generally show up in decent sized groups and just spray a bunch of bullets at you. They can absolutely ruin your day as well if you're not careful. So they're very susceptible to just being shot. They're also susceptible to getting in close to them and meleeing them. All the gun enemies in the game will stop shooting and try to melee you if you get close enough to them. So getting close is absolutely a strategy for dealing with them. It's going to take you time to realize when map knowledge allows you to get close to them and when you just have to shoot a couple before you can move forward. The only things to note other than that with these guys are the Dread Gunner is a mix of unarmored and flak armor on the shoulders. The Scab Gunner is all flak armor pretty much. And the Plasma Gunner, his head is Carapace and his body is flak, kind of like a ranged version of the Mauler. And he uses the Plasma Gun, which will take a huge chunk out of your toughness if it hits you, but it does have a big wind-up. You can see and hear it when he does it. There's also, not many of them will spawn at a time when they do. There's only like 2 or 3 at a time. So they're kind of dangerous, but they don't spawn in a big enough group that they're usually like that big of a deal by themselves. Like by themselves, you and your team will probably steamroll these guys before they get a chance to really do anything, unless there's like a whole bunch of other stuff going on. Crushers, as I said, Carapace armor, they have a ton of health. They can one-shot you. And in later difficulties, the game can and will throw groups of like 8, 9, 10 of them at you. They don't have much other than much that the Mauler doesn't. You have like a side swipe with their big hammer, and then they have an overhead. They can also push you. That's about it. They will spam the overhead at you and all kinds of nonsense. So just, these enemies will take a lot of practice for you to deal with, but eventually they won't be that bad. Bulwarks are some of the most annoying enemies in the game because they have a Carapace armor shield that you cannot shoot through. Very few weapons can go straight through the shield. There are a few exceptions, but for the most part, you should just accept that the shield means you can't hit them. You have to get behind them. When they swing at you with their club, they leave themselves open as well. If you hit them in the head with some weapons with a high enough stagger, they will get stunned for a second and leave their shield aside. It is worth noting that even though they have their shield up, it's not like it's still a directional shield. It doesn't count as like them blocking all the way. Like you can still shoot them in the back. You can still shoot them from the side. That kind of thing, and they'll still take plenty of damage and die eventually. They're very healthy. All the Ogren enemies are pretty healthy at the end of the day. Reapers are about the same as a Bulwark. They just don't have a shield. They have a big gun. The big gun, it does push you a little bit, but it does a lot of damage. Generally, any of the Ogren enemies that appear, you want to focus them with your team as a pretty high priority. because they will cause very big issues for you and your entire team if you let them stay for very long. Next are the special enemies. These enemies are, every single one of these that spawn have a sound cue attached to them, letting you know that they're on the map. And they have sound cues for when they're attacking as well. So when you're playing and you're starting out with your first couple games, there won't be that many of them, but try to pay attention to their sound cues and what each of them sounds like. They all have like voice lines. They all sound a little different. You'll get to the point where you can easily tell what's around you on the map at any given time just by listening, without even seeing any of them. And don't worry, on dark maps, a lot of them glow as well. Like they all glow a little bit. Even the ones like the Flamer and this Tox Bomber, they glow a slight, like this tank glows green, and his heads glow green. So even in like dark maps, you can still see them. And like his goggles, you can see. Her mask, you can see. The mutants are always really loud. The Flamers never have. Both of the Flamers are very visible. The Bomber, his bombs glow. The dog, very loud and runs at you. So these two are the Bombers. They'll generally try to stay far away from you and your group and throw big area denial grenades at you. They're not super dangerous in terms of killing power, but their area denial is really strong and the fact that they'll block entire pathways for several seconds that can get you and your team killed by other things. So if you can pick these out before they get a chance to do too much, it's always a huge help to your team. The Trapper is probably the most dangerous of all of these. She has a net gun that can shoot through any significantly decent sized hole, including in like stairways, anything like that. She can shoot through it, and if she hits you with that net, you're basically done unless a teammate helps you. Your teammate has to run over and help you. There is no way for you to get out of it yourself. So this is where staying with your team and being a team player is really important. If somebody else on your team gets trapped, you need to try to focus on helping them as quickly as possible. It's not like when they're going down, if they die and they need to be revived. Freeing someone from this trap takes a half second. You run over, you hold E for half a second, and you count as blocking while you're doing it as well, so you can't be slapped by a melee. And you get them up, and and they're taken care of. But still, this enemy has ruined more games for me than every other enemy in this room combined. So Trappers, very, very dangerous. Net gun, very bad. Mutants are deceptively easy to deal with. They're very loud and you can see them coming from a mile away. And they're not so much dangerous as they do a lot of damage, or like they grab you and they'll hold you down for a little bit, but they don't really do that much damage. But they can, while they're holding you, other things can still shoot you. So the flamethrowers can shoot you, snipers can shoot you, the regular gun enemies can shoot you. So it's not so much about the mutant itself, it's about what else is in the room. Because if it's by itself and it grabs you, you're gonna take like maybe a little bit of damage or none at all. If you're against a wall, they won't hit you. They'll just turn around and throw you somewhere. So they're not super dangerous in terms of what they do themselves, but they're dangerous in terms of they can hold you down and make other stuff able to shoot you and kill you. I have absolutely been killed because a mutant grabbed me and held me in a flamethrower. So the Flamers are very loud, very cackly maniacs that will try to get within mid-range of your team and then cover a whole pathway in fire. The fire will also push you backwards, so you'll have to shoot them or get around the fire in order to melee them. They're pretty dangerous. Again, like the bombers, they do more area denial, but their flamethrower will hit you directly and do a decent chunk of damage as well. And the flames will linger, so if you don't get out of it, you will take a bunch of damage to it. They're pretty dangerous in conjunction, again, with other specials. So bombers and flamers, by themselves, again, like in early difficulties, they're kind of a joke. Like, they don't really do that much, because you can kind of see them coming a mile away. At least the flamers are really loud, and you can you know, just shoot them a couple times. They're very squishy, and they're just kind of gone. You know, not a worry. But in conjunction with like hordes and everything else going on in higher difficulties, they get to be a huge menace for you and your team. Snipers, they do what they say on the 10. They have a big sniper rifle. They generally will stay farther away than any of the other specials will, and will take shots at you and your team. This will do absolutely massive damage, and if you're missing, like, I think it's around half your health, or a little bit less, a little bit more than half your health, they will kill you. This is precipitated, though, by their shots having a big red laser pointing to where they are, and it'll do like a big flash. Like, the whole laser will flash, and there'll be a big boom where you can just dodge the bullet. So these enemies aren't too hard to avoid once you like see the laser and dodge it a couple times. They're not that hard to deal with. But they can just be they can be really hard to deal with in higher difficulties, because they'll be in angles that are really hard to see, and you won't have time to focus on them. So my advice for avoiding them is, if you know there's one holding an angle, and there's just too much stuff in like a corridor, you're in a straight hallway and one's at the end, but there's like a horde in front of it, hang around the bend of the corner where he can't see you, and just deal with the horde first, and don't just sit there and dance in front of the horde with him aiming at you, because even if you're confident you can dodge it, it's not worth just dancing with the horde in front of him just to get unlucky and get dinked by a sniper round that kills you. So if you can't kill him, just try to stay where his laser can't see you. And the last special is a Pog Sound. This enemy is also very dangerous, like the Trapper, in the fact that if it pounces on you and you're not the arbitrator, you can't free yourself. Your teammates have to help you. Your teammates don't have to run over and hold E on you, though. They can just shoot the dog. Most weapons that they shoot it with will just knock it straight off, or hit it with a melee weapon, push it, anything like that. Can be from afar. They can use an ultimate on it, and it'll knock it off. Like, it gets knocked off by most things pretty easily. So it does make a lot of noise, and the way to deal with it, the Trapper, you have to dodge that. The dog, you need to push it. And if you notice, you can block and left click, and it'll consume stamina, and you can push it. You can push the dog as much as you want. Once you push it, it won't be able. It has to. It takes a while for it to recover. So when you push it, you look at it, and it kind of is standing back up. It can't pounce on you while it's doing that. So that's your time to just whack it a couple times on the head or whatever, and it's dead. It's gone. So now we got a couple more elites, and that'll be it. So these two are two different types of gunners. They have shotguns instead of machine guns, though. The shotguns will do a lot of damage and will push you back a little bit as well. And these do come in pretty decent sized groups sometimes. They're not super tanky, just like their counterparts with the machine guns. They're kind of squishy, so you can tear these apart pretty easily if you get into melee range with them, or if you feel like shooting them. They are pretty susceptible to being shot to death by whatever you have. And these enemies are Ragers, and Ragers are dual wielders who, once they start swinging, you can't interrupt them with normal melee weapons. Like, this normal melee strike will not stop them from sitting there and hitting you right back. If you're hitting an enemy like Poxwalkers and you're hitting them, generally they're getting staggered, and they're not going to be able to really hit you back. The Rager will tank through it and will just keep hitting you. So the way to avoid this, honestly, is to back up and shoot them. They're very susceptible to being shot. They have a decent amount of health, but they don't have enough that most guns can just kill them pretty quickly. So if you're in a corridor, use like a grenade or an ability to stagger them. You should also block their attacks until you're out of range of their attacks, and then switch to your weapon and shoot them. These in particular are enemies that I highly advise just blocking until you're far enough away that you can shoot them. You can also get good enough at dodging their melee combo to fight them in melee without needing to block, but that's a skill that takes quite a bit of time to develop for a new player. So my advice, again, is just simply back up and shoot them. There's nothing wrong with just keeping it simple. Alright, and last but not least, we'll go over some of the items that you can find. Grenades, obviously refill your grenades, ammo refills ammo. And then there's 2 different types of crates, medical crates and ammo crates. They can be placed on the ground. The medical crate will heal you and anybody near it, like in this little like green glow. It has a certain amount that it can heal. It doesn't have a timer. It has like a certain amount of health it can restore. It can restore 4 people to full health. Unless you're an Ogren, then the Ogren's health bar is significantly bigger than the other classes, so it takes up a lot more healing. So just keep that in mind. In each mission, there is 2 of each crate. There's 2 med crates and there's 2 ammo crates. So you'll want to use these at key points during the mission. My advice would just be, don't try to hoard them, because there's only 2 of them. Your instinct will be like, oh, we need to save it for the very end of the mission. But if you're all out of bullets, use the ammo crate, because each of you it has 4 uses and it fully restores ammo. Just go ahead and use it if you're all out of ammo and you're like halfway through the mission. Like, it's better than dying to specials because you're out of bullets. You might as well just use the ammo crate, get your bullets back, and stay safe from specials and other things that you might need to shoot, than dying to it trying to conserve bullets. So same thing with the health crate. If you're all really low midway through the mission and you don't really know where the next medical center is, or you don't really have much of a choice, like there's a horde coming and you're kind of stuck, use the med crate and just be safe. Like, yeah, you might need it at the end of the mission, but you might not get to the end of the mission if you don't use it now. So it'll take timing for you to really learn the maps and where the medicays are, when's the best time to use these. But my advice is just don't be afraid. Like, most people aren't going to be upset with you for playing it safe. I certainly won't be. So the last thing we'll go over pertaining to gameplay is stems. So there are 4 stems in the game. These are drugs. You find them in the game and various crates, on tables, whatever. There's 4 types. There's the med stem. It does what it says on the tin. It restores health. It also clears corruption, which corruption is just my health bar is white on the bottom. If I take damage from something that gives me corruption, a little piece of it will be purple, and I won't be able to restore that with like the med crate. Won't heal purple health. Or if I go down and there's like 2 bars right there, if I go down, one whole half of my health will be purple. So until I use a med stem or a Medicaid station, that's not going away, and I'll just be at half health, essentially. So med stems, very important. They're very good to just, if you see them, I would advise grabbing them and holding onto them until you need them or a teammate needs them. If you hold right click or aim on a controller, you can then use left click to hit a teammate with them, or you can just shoot to use them on yourself. The yellow stem is the drug that increases it gives you basically another charge of your ability over time. Like it'll make your ability cool down and come back really quickly. So these are dependent on the build and the ability you're using. Can be really strong. These kind of depend on which class and what ability you're using on when you want to use them. But this would be the second most valuable in my opinion. These 2 are the most valuable to me. The red and the blue, or the combat and the celerity, are basically just damage. Red stem gives you more damage. Gives you more damage, more armor shred, that kind of thing for the time period. The exact stats don't particularly matter too much because it's the same for every class. It just, red stem is more damage. So if a boss spawns, if you get like a bunch of armor enemies coming in, it's never a bad idea to just, if you have one of these, just pop it and then just go to town on the boss or the armored enemies to just try to get rid of as much of their health as quickly as possible. Last is the celerity stem. It's a different version of the red stem. It's attack speed, or essentially it also is reload speed as well. It's fire rate. Makes you do everything faster, basically. So, again, same use case as the red stem. It's just good. Depending on what build and what weapons you're playing, you'll want one of these more than the others. Like, if you have a machine gun, the blue stem is really good because it makes the fire rate of the machine guns really, really fast. So you can burn down, like, bosses and stuff really, really quickly. Red stem, I mean, if you have, like, a really heavy melee build, you can absolutely go to town and delete bosses and all kinds of things off your screen with one use of a red stem. And that pretty much details my beginner's guide to getting used to the enemies of Darktide and some little gameplay tricks. The only other thing I have left is a few finer things about melee. So, like the Crusher and the Mauler, weapons have overheads and sideways attacks, like slash attacks. So when you go into your inventory, you can inspect your weapon and it will tell you your light attack chain and your heavy attack chain, and it'll tell you which ones are which. So Vanguard is their wide attacks, they damage many enemies at once, and a strike down is a powerful attack targeting one enemy. That doesn't mean it hits only one enemy, that means it's an overhead essentially. So the rule of thumb for these as a player is that your overhead attacks, like if I'm heavy attacking, my first attack is a heavy, and it's an overhead, and it did a pretty hefty amount of damage, right? But my second one's a slashing attack, and it will do less on average than the overhead. But it's better, the sideways attacks are better for clearing trash, the overheads are better for getting armor. So when you're picking a melee weapon, keep in mind that your attack chain should be something that you're comfortable with. And you can always inspect every weapon before you go into a mission, just to get used to it. And you can see your attack chains, and you can view light attack chains, heavy attacks, and you can also see what your special action does. Each weapon has a special, and they vary in usefulness. This one is unique to this weapon. Some of them aren't unique though, and will be like just a push. Some will be very unique and change how the weapon works entirely. So it'll depend completely on the weapon. The heavy attack pattern will usually only have 2 or 3 different heavy attacks. The light attacks will all be in, there'll be like 4 in each chain, and they can vary greatly. That's what the marks of the weapons will be. So if we look at the Devil Claw Sword, you have different marks of each weapon, 1, 4, and 7. And each mark, the main difference between each mark for melee weapons will be the attack chain. So you just kind of mess with each one and find a chain that works best for you. The only other thing that's worth noting about melee in this regard is when you push and you hold left click or you hold attack, you'll do a push attack. So this is very safe to do in hordes when you're staggering them. As you can push and they can't hit you while you're pushing because you're staggering them. And then you attack really quickly with this Log. Different weapons have different push attacks. This one's a slash. Others have an overhead as their push attack. Others have a direct stab, which counts sort of like an overhead. So you should try to get as thoroughly acquainted with the weapon's moveset as possible so you can best decide how your melee attacks should work into your combos depending on which enemies you're fighting. I won't fight a Mauler the same way I'm going to fight a regular gun enemy. If I just spam light attacks at him, it takes significantly longer to kill him than if I just heavy attack him over and over again. Because this weapon has an overhead as the first heavy. So that's pretty important, and other than that, shooting is pretty simple. You have a gun, or if you're a psyker, sometimes a magic staff, and you point gun, you shoot gun, things die. Different guns do different damage to different enemies based on their armor value, so just some guns are terrible against Carapace, and you'll need to balance that out with your melee weapon so you can cover all your bases. Some guns are good for horde clear, some are good as like crusher, like armor killers, and some are good as just special killers / snipers for the medium health enemies as they are. So you'll kind of have to pick and choose. There's very few guns in the game that are good at everything, and if they are good at everything, they usually have a caveat such as low ammo count or long reload times, something like that to balance them out. That's pretty much my conclusion on the first beginner guide I've written for Darktide. If there's any questions, please let me know. If you want to see more, also let me know. Thank you for watching, and have a good day.